Oh my goodness, guys. You wouldn't even believe that I just did a whole hour stream and didn't realize that I wasn't live. So I'm gonna try to redo it, but definitely not an hour long. I'm just gonna hit the points. So let me add this real quick. We definitely were trying to read Labor and Finance Revolution, but first of all, my computer's recording application won't record, so that's not going to happen. I have to do it live if I do live. And then, of course, I did. I read for 45 to 50 minutes, and the same thing happened because I didn't want it to actually be live. But I just realized as I was reading down that there's 100 pages of the biography. 100 pages. Let me see. And that was just way too long. 100 pages. So I decided to ex-nay on reading because it's 400 pages. It's over 400 pages long. And I know, as I mentioned in my previous recording, that it's very elaborate and long, and I'm sure boring to many people who don't like reading. And again, in this new age of 3-second attention span, I know that people are probably going to fall asleep. So I wanted to show you guys I'm also going to post this on my posts so you guys have the opportunity to tell me what you want to actually see. Okay, almost there. There we go. Geez, yeah, see. So this is the contents: introduction, Declaration of Independence, Constitution of the United States, the coming revolution, our resources, cause of the dark ages, effects of currency contraction, nature and functions of money, material of money, antiquity of the greenback system, power to create money, value and price, colonial money, continental money, the first United States Bank, the second United States Bank, and the state banks. Bank of Venice, which, are the Shylocks. They are the Shylocks. I went on a huge rant in the non-recorded video just a little while ago about how interesting it was because I made a comment on this channel that I watch. It's called Sobering Stories. He does pretty good research, documentary deep dives. A good portion of it is very conspiratorial, as they call it. And the one that he was doing, the one that I was watching, was about Twitch and Ellen. And, Anne Hesh and Ellen, how she supposedly died and was in a body bag and then popped out. But it's okay. She died. Don't worry about it. And all of this stuff, right? Well, in it, he was showing these very questionable art pieces. Oh, that's right. Let me show you, because this was also in there. Annual consumption in the arts. And I just wanted to bring it back to this because I made a comment on his story that I thought it was interesting that he mentioned Basquiat. Basquiat was an African-American young gentleman who was a very popular artist. And I made a note that, in my undergraduate degree, I studied art history. That's part of my undergraduate degree from the beginning of time till the modern time. Let me tell you. And I told him that would it surprise anybody to know that only one person and only one person only, chooses the famous artist, the up-and-coming artist, the artist that will gain notoriety and financial security. One and only one. Whether they're artists off the street, whether they're artists from a university, whether they're artists from an art house, one and only one chooses for them to be in the industry. Okay? And then I mentioned who started the art history industry. Who started the art industry? Not just art. Art's always been. But there is an art industry. And you want to know who started the art industry? The Medicis from Venice. The Medicis. With the Renaissance. Right? Right? Yeah. That too was one and only one man who chose the artists who would be up and coming. And I just thought it was very interesting. He also mentioned that Basquiat was a part of what he calls the 27 Club, which is a whole bunch of artists and actors and blah, 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 famous people who die at the age of 27 in mysterious circumstances. And I just mentioned that, through all my studies, I learned a lot of very questionable things. One of them being that the art industry has no regulations, zero regulations for shipments of their pieces. None. They also have special privileges in shipping. So no one will ever check their containers. Never. They're not allowed. They have special companies that are there to do it, and no one will ever see what's inside those shipping containers. I thought that was very, very weird. But not only that, everything that we're talking about, the Shylock, how they took over, that was them. That was the Medicis. The Medicis took over. And what were we watching? I can't remember. I tried to show you guys something in that whole hour thing that I just totally screwed up. And it talked about how the Medicis did exactly what's happening now. So what they did is that they took all the money from their people, right? Because it talks about how there's a government of Venice or whatever. And I'm like, there was no government in Venice. They were all small republics. What the hell are you talking about? But anyways, it talks about later on, it talks about how everyone was just like, oh, and about how they created this whole banking system and all this stuff. And I was just like, yeah, they stole a whole bunch of money from their people, from the people in their districts. They took the money from them and they spent it on themselves, so they looked extremely rich and wealthy and powerful. But all that money was the people's money. And then when the people started needing their money back and the Medicis didn't have it, then shit started to go awry. And then that is precisely when they put their foot into the Vatican, right? And so they started selling, God damn it, I said it earlier, spirits, I guess, what they like to call it, like blessings and like protection in the afterlife, and that if you die, you'll go to heaven and all this shit. Like that was them. That was the Medicis that started corrupting the church. And it was the Medicis who corrupted themselves into the Pope's seat so that they could charge for spirits and blessings and stuff like that. Insane asylum. These same people are the same people who established Americans' financial system in the same exact way. And that's how they got away with it, because they put themselves in positions where people could not question their authority, such as the Pope. But they are nothing but pieces of trash. Anyway, so I'm going to post these too and see if you guys want to tell me if there's something specific. Metallic money, not a standard of value. Digestive Coinage Act, Coins of the United States, the world's annual production of gold and silver, annual consumption in the arts, of course, of money, because that's how they launder it. Gold, silver, and base metal in Europe, annual production from American mines, amount of coin and bullion in the Bank of England, amount held by the Bank of France, silver standard countries, double standard countries, gold standard countries, average gold value of greenback from 1864 to 1878. Winehouse silver was demonetized. National banks, legal tender of banknotes, national bank circulation, security of banknotes, amount outstanding, circulation of Bank of France, number of banks, capital, surplus, and profits. Imperial Bank of Germany, bank taxation, none. Origin of bank notes, constitutionality of bank notes, none. Legal tender paper money, amount of legal tender paper money in the world, the greenback, constitutionality of the Legal Tender Act, decision of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, that is not the law of the land. Was it Judge Brandeis, I believe? Who was just like, it's up to the court to decide. No, it's not. The public debt of France, England, and America compared. Digest of finance legislation since 1860. There was no public debt. We had no public debt. I'm so pissed off at these goddamn history fucking changers. And then when you want to go and show people the actual history, then they claim and they blame you for lying and faking it. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's right there. It's right there in the history books. But they'll change it before you can do anything. And that's literally the Shylocks way. They blame you for what they do. Tables, what the bonds cost, foreign coins, monthly range of gold, amount of paper currency, refunding, bonds to mature, exports and imports, agricultural products, money in the country, debts, revenues, etc. of nations, public debt of the United States. From these dates, population, capitals, and area of nations. Table of prices for 50 years, compound interest table, value of farm products, importation of specie, power of interest to rob, the increasing value of money, salaries of public officers, Supreme Court of the United States, business failure, circulation of species of banks, popular vote of 1856, and the popular vote of 1876. Again, we learned a lot of this from Emery's book. But this is just even more, goes to show you like the ins and outs. And this is what I mean about the usurpers, the disgusting evil of the Bar Association. Because they completely just create these laws out of thin air, out of their assholes. And then they want you to follow it. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? But they depend on the dumbing down of America, as many books say. What was that guy's name? He was a great author and teacher. And he wrote a book called Dumbing Down of America. And he explains how that happened and why that happened. And this is why. So that if you were to say something in reality, in truth about the past, people can just be like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You don't know what you're talking about. We're the authority. We're the authority, and we'll pull out whatever the hell we want to and tell you it is what it is, and you just got to believe us, man. You just got to believe us. 97. Okay, so 98. Yeah, see, this was very interesting. The state of Rhode Island made an examination into the affairs of the Farmers' Exchange Bank of Gloucester, and it was found that the bank had $580,000 of its notes in circulation and only $86.16 in its vaults for their redemption. Speculation. I'm going to start a new channel. It's called The Speculator. And I'm going to talk about all kinds of what they like to call conspiracy theories, but that are truths that not a lot of people understand. But of course, all speculative. Of course. I would never do anything other than speculate at all. It also goes to show another interest of mine about the bullshit ass attorneys of the world, and I always question, it's so funny because everyone's got to be like, this is not legal advice. This is not legal. This is not legal advice. I'm just. Who the fuck cares? I don't need your fucking legal advice. The fuck are you? Who the fuck gives legal advice? Again, who the fuck are you? Who gives legal advice? When do they give that legal advice? Exactly. Because if you know anything that I know, they're fucking lying ass pieces of shit. And I wouldn't take the advice of a fucking attorney if I was dying. So, sorry, I'm all good. Don't need your legal advice. Yeah, see, the Venetian government was the first banker and established the first bank on record. It was a bank, too, that not only did all the banking business of the Republic, but of a large portion of the civilized world. Yeah, and this is how it happened. The Venetians are the Shylocks, and this is how it happened. The Shylocks who still run our government and every other government around this world, save for maybe a couple of African countries, but they're working hard on that. I'll tell you that. Yeah, the large proportion of the civilized world. Okay? And why? Why could they do that in the large proportion of the civilized world? Because they were the richest government there was. Why? Because they were stealing the money for the people, and the people had no clue. Kind of like today. Yeah, in the year 1171, a war between the Venetian Republic and the Grecian Empire gave rise to the Bank of Venice, as our late Civil War gave rise to our greenback system, the currency or exchange medium. See? Mm-hmm. 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 They just recreated what they did in Venice, in America, and everywhere else they were. Because they had these wonderful people called attorneys, judges, officers of government. They could just say whatever they wanted, and you had to take it. The Venetian government was obliged to have recourse to what is falsely called a forced loan. Like our government during the late war, it needed soldiers, guns, ammunition, ships, mules, horses, and other things necessary to carry on a successful campaign. And as all these things must be paid for, money must be had, and the government had none. It proposed to borrow it from its own citizens in such sums as each felt able to dispose and contribute. For these sums loaned to the government, the individuals loaning them were simply credited on the books. See, and this is what you're doing. This is what you're doing today, as of today. And I just read it, but you guys didn't get to see it. Maybe I'll touch on it again, but it was the Indentured Servant Act, the Trust Indentured Servant Act, which basically put into law this right here, saying that an individual loaning the government is now called an indentured debtor. Of the government treasury, and these credits were made transferable in part or in whole, and thus became a medium of exchange and substitute for money in the payment of debts. See? The difference between the Venetian system and the greenback system was the Venetians gave their credits for money, and with the money purchased supplies and paid for services, while our government gave its greenback credit tokens direct for what it needed without the use of money. Anyways, the policies and systems were identical, except the greenback system is more simple as it avoids the unnecessary handling of coin. Yep. Anyway, so I'm going to post the contents on my page, and you guys can go over them and type in a chapter or a portion of the contents that you want me to go over, because it's a lot. And if you guys haven't noticed, I like to talk a lot of shiznick. So it's difficult for me to read this without giving you my 2 cents. Let me see what I had before. I wanted to show you guys. Oh yeah, I wanted to. Go over this again quickly.
And then state your name and title for the record. Thank you.
It is on. My name is Publius Hulda. I'm a retired litigation attorney, and I write on the original intent of the Constitution using the Federalist Papers. I do not go by Supreme Court opinions because for 200 years, the Supreme Court has been ignoring the Federalist Papers and the Constitution our framers given, and they have gone off on tangents of their own which have nothing to do with the Constitution.
That's right.
The Attorney General's opinion begs the question. He states that states can't nullify acts of the federal government which are authorized by the Constitution, but then he completely fails to cite article, section, and verse, a clause, where the Constitution
And that's what attorneys will do. They'll bullshit your asshole
delegates
with no authority to do so.
to Congress authority to restrict our arms. When we ratified the Constitution, we created the federal government. We listed, enumerated every power we granted to our creature, the federal government. Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 through 16.
I just want to make note here, because in law, what you create, you control. So what she is trying to emphasize here is that it is our creature. We created it, therefore we control it. Okay, because when you go into court or when you're messed with by a cop or anything that has to do anything with a service officer of this corporation, of this government, you don't need to be dealing with them. I forgot what I was saying, damn it.
Lists most of the powers we delegated to Congress for the government, for the country at large. We didn't put on our list that our
Oh yeah, the creature. They didn't create you. They have usurped that presumption from you and everything, and God. Okay? Because you cannot administer without right. That's why I audit the administration. Okay, because the administration administers to you every day on a daily freaking basis without right. Why? Why can you not administer to something without right? Because you didn't create it.
Creature could restrict our arms. We didn't delegate this power to Congress because our framers wanted the American people to be heavily armed. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison write about this in the Federalist Papers. In Federalist Paper number 46, James Madison writes, "Why the American people are armed. It is so we can defend ourselves, our communities, and our states from the federal government in the event it becomes tyrannical and..."
And we know it always will because it always follows the same script. And they knew that because, as I said in my earlier recording that didn't ever get recorded, they killed Heath. They killed him. And I made that assumption. I made that speculation. That's in my opinion. If you watch the thing I just recorded and put up, it talks about how he got pneumonia twice right after he was fighting. And I was just like, well, duh, they're going to kill him. I mean, they killed President Lincoln over the same thing. These Shylocks have no fear in getting what they want and doing what they need to do to get what they want. They'll kill the President of the United States to get what they want. They'll have no qualms killing a freaking journalist. And I mean, shoot, look what's going on right now. The Shylocks are still killing journalists. More journalists than have been murdered in every single war that has ever been in this world.
Oversteps the constitutional limits on its powers. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16, pursuant to that, Congress passed the Militia Act of 1792, where they required every able-bodied male citizen between the ages of 18 and 46, except for federal officers and employees, to buy a rifle, ammunition, and report to their local militia for training.
Holy shit, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? There was a law put in place that said every able-bodied American from the age of 18 to 46 could buy and have a gun. And what did she say right after that? Except for federal agents. Oh, shit. Oh. Have we flipped that script too? Yeah, because as you see every day in every auditor's video, the federal agents, the state agents, have guns and they kill us on a daily basis while telling you you can have yours. How far have we come from the Constitution?
Pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, Congress is authorized to issue letters of marque and reprisal. This is what authorizes private warships to make war on our enemies. These were the privateers who fired on British ships during the War of 1812. Our framers contemplated a people who were heavily armed. That is why we never delegated to our creature authority to restrict our arms in any fashion whatsoever.
Never.
And when the federal government attempts to do so, they are usurping powers which they do not possess.
Oh, this lady, she's just a conspiracy theorist.
The Attorney General goes by court opinions, not the Constitution. There is a vast gulf between the two. We have 200 years of Supreme Court opinions, and Mr. Chairman very kindly shared some of these 200 years of Supreme Court opinions, which have nothing to do with the Constitution. Charles Evans Hughes said over 100 years ago, the Constitution means what the judges say it means. That has been the prevailing dogma ever since, and generations of lawyers have been indoctrinated with this lie.
The lie. Indoctrinated with the lie. Like I said, bar associations, liars.
That is why we no longer have a federal government which is held down by the chains of the Constitution. What we have is ruled by five judges on the Supreme Court who claim the power to do whatever they want to us and our country. So today we have two opposites, what the Constitution says and what the Supreme Court says. Well, your oath of office requires you to obey the Constitution.
What did she just say? Oath of office? What's that? Because you do know that none of our officials hold oaths of office. They don't have oaths of office. They are not the government. They are impersonating government officers. We'll go over that here shortly.
Not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is merely a creature of this Constitution and is completely subject to its terms. My third point, the AG asserts that that the Supreme Court is the exclusive and final authority on the extent of the powers of the federal government. But our framers knew that Supreme Court judges were as likely as anybody else to be corrupt, usurp powers, and act lawlessly.
That's damn right. That's why they implemented the 13th Amendment, declining any titles of nobility to be in the federal government, meaning attorneys, associates of the Temple Bar, the bar of the crown.
So Congress, the President, and the states all have checks on the Supreme Court. Hamilton shows in Federalist number 81 that Congress's check on lawless federal judges is to impeach them and remove them from office. The President has his oath of office as a check on the Supreme Court. The President's oath is to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
But if the president doesn't have an oath, then does that mean that they have to preserve and protect the Constitution?
It is not to obey the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was not set up in our Constitution as the superior branch of the federal government. And then there's no need for me to... Well, Madison says in his report on the Virginia resolutions that it is a plain principle founded in common sense that the states, as the sovereign parties to the Constitution, are the final authority on whether the federal government has violated the Constitution.
The plain principle, which we all can clearly understand.
And that the states may check all three branches of the federal government, not
Right.
just, they may check the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative branches by nullifying their acts. If the judicial branch connives with other branches,
I do just want to mention that through the incorporating of the United States of America, they incorporated the states. That's why the states will never move against the federal government, because they have been incorporated too, and they're getting the same money payouts as the federal agents are. Just side note.
branches and usurping powers, our Constitution will be destroyed if we do not stop them. This is what James Madison said in his notes on nullification, in his report on the Virginia resolution. I'm sorry I didn't have time to finish. I hope that during questions someone will ask me about the so-called nullification crisis of 1832.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Very interesting. The so-called. I like how she said the so-called. Let's see what it says. This so-called. Mind you, I played this already because I thought I was recording, but mind you what it says here. Mind you what everything that they're talking about is happening now. Happening now? Happening now.
In 1828, Congress passed a tariff that increased the rates on imports into the United States to as much as 50%. This was the largest increase in the country's history. The aim was to protect American manufacturing in the North by making importing foreign goods more expensive. There were strong feelings about the tariff of 1828. Reactions were divided by geography, and the country split in a way that would later be echoed by the division between the Union and the Confederacy in the Civil War. People in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana.
Wait, did they just say that the high tariffs and stuff had to do with the Civil War?
Illinois, Missouri, and Kentucky generally supported the tariff. Meanwhile, Southerners nicknamed it the Tariff of Abominations.
Mind you, this is Texas over here.
Residents of New England mostly opposed it as well, though not nearly as unanimously as in the South. Support of the tariff was one of the issues that helped decide the election of 1828. John Quincy Adams lost to Andrew Jackson. Jackson, however, disappointed his native South Carolina base by supporting the tariff to help pay the national debt. The tariff forced Southerners to buy manufactured goods from businesses in the North at high prices. On top of this, Britain was importing less cotton because their profits from exports had dropped, which also hurt the Southern economy. The tariff was reduced slightly in 1832, more of a gesture than a fix. By 1833, South Carolina was threatening secession. President Jackson compelled Congress to further reduce the punitive tariff rates. while also granting him the power to use military force against South Carolina if necessary. Congress passed the 1833 Compromise Tariff. This brought the rates back to a reasonable level,
A year
but the
before they
damage
took our
had been
gold.
done.
100
The
years ago.
reality of the country's deep economic divisions and disparate concerns had been brought into stark focus, causing tension that would simmer for another few decades and then spill over into the Civil War.
Britannica. That's why she called it so-called. The nullification crisis was a conflict between the U.S. state of South Carolina and the federal government. South Carolina? I thought it was Texas. It was driven by the South Carolina politician John C. Calhoun, who opposed the federal imposition of tariffs in 1828 and 1832 and argued that the U.S. Constitution gave states the right to block the enforcement of a federal law. In November 1832, South Carolina adopted the Ordinance of Nullification, declaring the tariffs null, void, and non-binding in the United States, or in the states. U.S. President Andrew Jackson, the bad guy, responded in December 1832 by issuing a proclamation that asserted the supremacy of the federal government. There it is, right there. It goes to show you what I just said about the states. Having proclaimed the tariffs of 1828 and 1832 null and void within its boundaries, South Carolina threatened to secede from the Union. Oh, I thought it was them damn Texans. I thought it was them damn Confederate racist Texans that seceded from the Union. You didn't learn that in school? Well, shucks. The Union, if the federal government attempted to enforce the tariffs. Again, they mentioned nothing about the banks, guys. Because literally South Carolina threatened to secede because Andrew Jackson was putting a tax on the state bank. The state bank. And they were like, nah, brah, we're not going to shut the bank down because we know you want to open a central bank from the damn Shylocks. And we say no. And Andrew Jackson was like, you don't get to say no. I'm the boss. And they were like, no. And he was like, fine, then I'm going to tax you every single day, like $5 million if you don't shut down. And so they were like, bet, we secede. Peace, bitch. And then Andrew Jackson was like, go get him! Go get him, Shylock! Declared that states did not have the right to nullification. And in 1833, Congress passed the Force Bill, authorizing the federal use of force to enforce the collection of tariffs. That's weird. It's kind of like King John, right? Meanwhile, Senator Henry Clay of Kentucky engineered passage of the Compromise Tariff of 1833, which gradually lowered tariffs over the next 10 years. The hell out of here. And that's why it's the so-called, because it had nothing to do with tariffs. It had to do with the bank. Well, I mean, tariffs, yes, but it's because we were using greenbacks and they were changing it to the bonds, remember? Jackson's proclamation to the people of South Carolina. Yep, President Andrew Jackson regarded the South Carolina Ordinance of Nullification as a clear threat to the federal union and national authority. Yep. On December 10th, 1832, Jackson issued his proclamation to the people of South Carolina, asserting the supremacy of the federal government and warning that disunion by armed force is treason. In rebutting Calhoun states' rights position, Jackson argued Jackson's proclamation evoked a defiant response from South Carolina in the resolutions of December 20, including... See? Disgusting. Disgusting. This is very interesting about nullification, too, because, you know, all this BS on TV about these court cases like Karen Reed and Puffy, you know. And, of course, I think it's a total distraction of everything that's actually going on in the world. I think it's also a normalization of what that woman just said about the court's authority. And what a lot of people don't understand, and if you are an auditor of any type or a an American, you know about the nullification clause. You know that it also pertains to juries, pertains to the court. And just as an example, of course, they'll put you in jail if you tell people about nullification. I don't know if I can find it, but there was a little documentary that a young reporter did one time where he was walking past a courthouse and he saw an old man passing out information about jury nullification. And cops arrested him on the public property and said that he was whatever the hell he was doing. And that young journalist was there and watched the whole thing go down. So he was like, what? That seems a little weird. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Like, what is he peddling that they're so afraid of? And so he got in contact with the guy and he asked, and the guy was just like, yeah, they're completely overreaching. This is jury nullification. It is a legal doctrine that they don't allow people to know about because, the courts are completely corrupt. And what nullification means is, for instance, and I heard it too. I heard it being talked about in the Diddy trial. So I also find it very, very interesting that no regular person is allowed to use jury nullification unless you want to be imprisoned by the courts, the corrupt courts, just for speaking about it. Yet all of a sudden it's becoming a plain thing in the Diddy trial. And I'm just like, how interesting. And what that means is, just as an example, if the court ruled that Diddy was guilty and they told the jury to find in that manner, the jury could come together and discuss it. And if they decided that they didn't want him to go to jail or whatever the case may be, they could nullify the court's orders, meaning they could let him go free. It's up to the jury. The jury is the ultimate say. And in the reverse, if the court, because it's corrupt, is in cahoots with all these psycho elitist people, decided that, oh no, the evidence doesn't show what we were looking for, so he's free to go, the jury has the option to nullify the court's view or opinion. And they can say, nah, the evidence we found clearly shows that he's guilty and we want to put him in jail for life. They could do that because the ultimate authority comes from the jury. But I just find it very interesting how literally people will be put in jail for informing other citizens about the jury nullification. But all of a sudden we have this like high profile Diddy case and it's being talked about left and right. Like what? Anyways, I thought this was interesting too. Maybe I'll touch on it in a minute, but it's basically the manual of publicly available telephone interpretations, guys. This is how disgusting and fucking psycho these people are, okay? Because this is the T-Trust Indenture Act of 1939. It's actually 1933. You'll see that. So the same year they took away the gold, they enslaved everyone as indentures, indenture debtors, okay? Let's see what it says here. And the reason why they call it the available telephone interpretations, mind this word right here, interpretations, okay? Publicly available telephone interpretations. What does that have to do with indenture or trust or anything else? I'll tell you right now, because as an indentured slave, you are considered a transmitting utility. They trade you on the stock market as a transmitting utility. Okay, and it clearly shows it if you read the actual act. Let me see here. Trust Indenture Act does not apply to traditional preferred stock. As such, stock is not considered to be a debt. We're not talking about cows and animals. We're talking about people, bro. By a single obligor, okay? The trust that represents an interest in debt issued by a single obligor. A foreign corporation doing business in the United States proposed to sell bonds abroad to persons other than citizens of the United States in reliance on Regulation S Under these circumstances, the division staff confirmed the sales may be made without qualification of an indenture under the Trust Indenture Act as stated by the Commission in release number blah, 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 blah. Why I'm saying this is because this right here, this language basically fits into the exact same language in the Trading with the Enemies Act, where they have identified you and I, American citizens, as an enemy in trade. We're not foreign enemies, as the act was originally interpreted for, but they amended a small portion of it, as they always do, to include the trade of American citizens. So, after a shelf registration, okay, registration, that's like your birth certificate or your registration of your car or anything else like that, all right, has been declared effective and related indenture has been qualified. A post-effective amendment may not be used for the purpose of qualifying a new indenture for another class of securities deemed to be previously registered. Note this position supersedes a previous telephone interpretation. This is how they hide their fucking bullshit, dude. Are you kidding me? They're talking about people here. So this supersedes any previous position that the person was in. They are now a trust indenture, and they are security for the America's debt. And it has been declared effective, and nothing you can do can change it. So they say. Indenture permits series of unsecured debt securities. You are an unsecured individual. You are not secured. The money that you have in the bank is not secured. It's not yours. You don't know that, do you? See, the indenture that is filed with and qualified upon the effectiveness of the registration statement, your birth certificate. Let's see here. I think it says here and here in a minute. Yep, see? Certificates representing a beneficial ownership interest in a trust are offered to the public pursuant to a registration statement under the Securities Act. Literally, your certification of registration of your car, your title, your birth certificate. Guys, oh my God. The certificates are treated as exempt from the Trust Indenture Act under section this thereof. The guarantee of the certificates is exempt under section. Yeah. So insane. Anyway. There's something under here. I can't remember where I saw it as I was reading it, because it says that supplemental indentures modifying terms of securities outstanding under previously qualified indentures need not be requalified unless the changes are so significant that they are deemed to involve the offering of a new security requiring Securities Act registration. If the offering is ongoing, they must be filed as an exhibit. If the offering has terminated, the amended indenture should be filed as Exhibit 4 in the applicable Exchange Act. Rule this under the Trust Indenture Act provides an exemption from the qualifications provisions of the Act for debt securities issued under the indenture, which limits the aggregate principal amount outstanding at any one time to 10 million or less during a 36-month period. Yep, see. Yep. Because once you register your birth certificate with them, they put an amount on your books, usually dependent. It's a certain amount of millions. And every year that you live and provide for the company, the company, that price goes up. And that means that's your credit. So every time you get a car or you do this or that or the other, they are pulling from your $10 million at the same time asking you to pay, and you're paying. It talks in here, though, the bonds. Because it talks about the beneficiary and the trustee. It talks about if the trustee can't be trust, then, a trustee will be appointed. So what does it say here? The debenture. Yeah, you're the debenture. You're the person that holds the debt, can be furnished in a supplemental indenture field and disclosed in a sticker to the prospectus. The sticker price? You have a sticker price. What? You didn't know? You didn't know that everything that you do is sold on the stock market? You didn't know that? The indenture is unique in that it permits each series of debt security holders to vote separately to direct the trustee to act or to waive defaults. In this respect, it is more restrictive than Section this, the Trust Indenture Act, which provides only that holders of a majority of the securities outstanding under the indenture may direct the trustee to act. Okay, so if there's a trustee in a debenture and that there's a majority of the holders of the securities, who are they? Who are they? If they can direct the trustee to do something, then what makes the debt person? You're the beneficiary, guys. It's clearly right here. The conflict of interest provision of the open-ended indenture required by Section this of the Trust Indenture Act was drafted to include conflicts between various series as well as those arising under other indentures with the same trustee. Conflicts between various series. They trade you on the stock market. You are a series. If you earn a degree, you have another series. If you get a job, you have another series. You buy a car, you have another series. You have insurance, you have another series. This is also what people don't understand. Again, I'm a teacher, 4th and 5th grade. I know I spoke about this in the previous recording, but it wasn't recorded. And I thought it was interesting because there's a lot of sick stuff going on in our school system. But one of the things that's so prevalent right now is kids with disabilities, that they don't actually have disabilities. It's everything under the sun. Like literally, they make shit up and give it a disability significance. Because what people don't understand is if you have a disability and you have provisions for that disability, that's also another security that you're creating for that person. So if a student has a 504 or an IEP or, anything like that, that is a security for that human being that they're trading on the stock market. Yeah. And as a 4th grader, last year, I was teaching my 4th graders during Constitution Week, mind you, the Constitution. 2 4th graders, all right? From the TEKS, from the Texas Education Skills, Knowledge and Skills, TEKS, Texas Education Knowledge and Skills. That's the legal code for education in Texas. Okay, from their curriculum, from their legal code, I was teaching the Constitution. Nothing crazy, because I'm not a fucking Democrat, I'm not a fucking Republican, I'm not a fucking anything. I'm fucking smart. I'm an American, is what I am. Okay? And I don't talk shit about shit like everyone else does. What I talk about is reality, truth. Okay, so what I was teaching my children were the preamble, the Bill of Rights, i.e. the 10 Amendments, first 10 Amendments, rights, privileges, the branches of government, that we the people are the seat of government. Okay, that's all I was teaching them. Nothing big, nothing crazy. Mind you, they all were like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We're not the government. We're not the government. I'm like, we are the government. And of course, these 4th graders were talking all kinds of shit about political stuff that I gave no interest to at all whatsoever. Redirected it every chance I could. Very scary that these baby children have these types of opinions from their parents and psychos from around the world. But what I was trying to maintain and steer them in on was the legal, logical government, our foundation. That's what I was teaching them. Oh, and you want to know what happened? Shortly after that, I got pulled into the principal's office. And the principal told me that teaching the Constitution was a conspiracy theory. Guys, I fucking shit you not. My principal of a red Texas state told me that teaching my 4th graders the Constitution was a conspiracy theory. Needless to say, I quit shortly after that. I'm supposed to be working at a Montessori school next year, so we'll see how that goes, but it doesn't matter because the education system is controlled by the fuckers. So it doesn't matter where you go in any state of this beautiful country, they're teaching and they're learning the same BS. And I'm telling you right now, my 4th and my 5th graders could not read. They could not write. They could not cognize. They could not understand. They could not use their computers. They could, mind you, because that's all they want them to do is be on the computers. And it was insane. It was absolutely insane. And, you know, I'm a lover of life. I'm a lover of knowledge. I'm a lover of learning. So, of course, I'm teaching my students all kinds of stuff that is like just open. You know what I mean? And, you know, they always say that these kids are fucking stupid and they can't learn anything and everything else like that. All the other teachers treat them like literal shit. I had another teacher who, she was a high math class. I taught math and science and social studies. She was supposedly a high math teacher. And she literally on a regular basis called them stupid, said they couldn't do it anyways, and allowed them to play Fortnite on their computers in class during instruction. Mind you, other students would get expelled for doing that, for going onto the computer and playing Fortnite. Yet this teacher was allowing her entire class of quote-unquote high students to play Fortnite. And what she said was that, oh, well, this is the smart class. They know anyways. Mind you, this was the same teacher that took exponents out of PEMDAS because she didn't understand it, even after I explained it to her, and then the team, and then the team lead, and then the administration. Yeah, I had to explain exponents 15 million times, as if they couldn't Google it themselves. So you have adults, instructors who are fucking stupid, teaching your students who are even more stupid. God bless this fucking goddamn country, because we are going down with the fishes. Okay? And in my master's program, I wrote about collegiate illiteracy. College students, stupid. Okay? And these college students are being graduated and are being put into positions of like government, doctors, caretakers, lawyers, government agents. Like, are you kidding me? No wonder. No wonder. This is dangerous, y'all. This is dangerous. Dangerous. And what was this? Oh, yeah, this was the faulting of the indenture. This is where it was. See, Chapter 38 of the 73rd Congress approved 1933. So the minute they took your gold, they created you into an indentured servant. Because what fucking servant do you know owns gold? All right, anyway, sorry. I know this is long. I know it's probably annoying and stupid, so let's go back to the StreamYard and end the stream. I'll put a post up, see if any of you guys want to hear anything about the interesting stuff in the labor and finance. And then I think I'll be back to do some analysis of some of my fellow auditors. All right, bye guys.